Okay, I'm going to give a little detail on how I built this chainsaw mill setup. It's not pretty, but I got some use out of it, so I guess it was worth the time. I can't say I suggest building it unless you don't have any other option. I mean, I built it pretty much for like $10 worth of hardware, so can't beat the price, but it's not a great solution for if you're going to be doing a lot of milling. So what I did, it was pretty much all built with like a chop saw, a miter saw, and a powered driver and screws, except for this piece here. The piece that actually connects to the saw is made out of metal. This piece was an old door hinge. So what I started out by doing is I figured this is if I connect where the clutch cover bolts are, that should be a pretty secure anchoring point, and then I don't have to drill through the bar or anything. So what I did was I think I might have used a drill press for this, but you could probably just use a drill, and if you're careful, to drill holes so that the two bolts will go through here, and then I drilled a couple small holes so that I could mount this. So I did this before any of the wooden construction. So I got it to the point where I could slide it over here, which involved notching out a little spot here and making sure it sits flush. I think I did that with an angle grinder, which I got at Harbor Freight for like $10 or something. So, and I already had it. Once that's you're happy with that, mount it to a 2x4 that's long enough to for the height of your saw, and that's going to be the basis. This one actually was, I think, just the height up to this handle, although I guess I forget what my exact plan was. It was a while ago now, but I figured this would be a secure mounting point, but I also wanted to make sure that if anything broke, this chainsaw wouldn't come flying off. So the idea was to build this cage that would be very tight to the saw, so that if anything happened with the attachment point, the saw would still be very securely held in this cage. And what that involves is the first piece has to have this thing attached to it, and then you can probably see some ugly chisel work here, because I wanted to get that piece of 2x4 very, very close in here, and different parts of the saw protruding made it not possible to do with just a regular 2x4 with that piece sticking out. So once you have this first piece built, I just took measurements to build the rest of the cage tight around the saw, and there are a couple other spots where I had to chisel out, like over here, and that was for the handle. And so what it essentially is 4 uprights, then two cross braces on each side, and then 2 pieces along the bottom, and it wasn't thought out very well. If I was building it again, if you plan a little better, you can make it a little neater and probably a lot lighter. I used full 2x4s in the beginning, and then I cut down and used half 2x4s. I don't think you necessarily need 2x4s all the way around. This is one of the most annoying parts of the design, is that to fuel the saw, I have to take the saw out, and that involves unscrewing these and then unscrewing the bolts to the that hold the saw onto the anchor point. If you plan a little bit better, so that you build a cage so you can access the oil and fuel filler points, you'll be a lot better off. Alright, it's finally slid onto the bolts coming out. Pull the clutch cover on, so this, you definitely need a notch. Well, at least in my design, I needed a notch, or lack of a design. I needed a notch so that I could access this second bolt and get the nut on there. I won't actually be able to tighten it down easily with this. I ended up using a long socket extension to tighten this when I was actually using it. I forgot to bring that out today, so this saw is a Husqvarna Rancher, or 455 Rancher, or Rancher 455, whatever it's called. I've had this saw about 2 years now, maybe, I forget, but I've got a lot of good use out of it, but it's definitely on the weak side for chainsaw milling. So this setup is only as useful as the saw that you put in it, and this cut very well through, or fairly well through, some pine that I had and some basswood, but what's on here now I think is ash, and I just gave up because it was just impossible to cut with this. I cut I got 2 cuts in, well, not even 2 cuts, cut the bark off, and then I got like 3/4 of the way through one cut, and it just was taking forever and not cutting well, so I gave up, and that was the last thing I did with this chainsaw mill. So after you tighten that down, make sure your chain brake is not going to be forced in one direction, forced on or anything. And if you look, like I said, I didn't really have so much of a design in mind. I started with this one piece with that old door hinge on it, and then I kept measuring and adding to this cage so that it would fit snug against as many parts of the saw as I could manage. So like I said, if this attachment point breaks, the saw is not going to come flying at me. It should pretty much stay put. So these two guys on the top here, pivot, and then they're held in place. A couple of screws, deck screws, I think they are. With this nice star pattern driver is a lot nicer than Phillips. So just now I'll show the whatever you want to call this thing. This also didn't have a whole lot of design behind it. Started off, I knew I had a ladder, which you may or may not have available. If you have a ladder like this, one of these sliding ladders, there'll be a little recess here between the two different segments, and I had a bunch of skateboards laying around, so I had a bunch of skateboard wheels. You can buy skateboard wheels pretty cheap, or find someone throwing out a skateboard, or you could maybe just use ball bearings or something, or even maybe PVC pipe. And I ran threaded rod through each of these 4 posts, and I bought a build-a-bolt kit from Home Depot with a threaded rod, so I could cut it to whatever I needed. And these 4 posts each have a wheel that sits in this recess, and this additional piece was put on each side to kind of prevent wobble or reduce wobble. It still wobbles a lot, but the idea is that the weight rests on the wheels when you're pushing the mill, and this prevents the side-to-side wobble. So these 4 posts, and then there's this area where the saw slides up and down, and these ugly diagonal pieces were kind of an afterthought because I was getting a lot of flex in these guys. They were pushing out of the groove. These would bow out, and then the wheels would come out of this groove here. So I added these guys on for support, and they reduced that a bit. So those are the 4 posts. To be honest, I think before I did I forget if I did the wheels first or not. I don't remember the order that I built this in, unfortunately. But the critical thing is, or I should say the initial design idea was that there would be this channel that this chainsaw cage would slide up and down in, and I thought it would be simple. It wasn't quite as simple as I thought, for a couple of reasons. So you need you obviously need the place for the chainsaw bar to go. You need you also need a place. You want this cage to be completely contained on all sides so it doesn't wobble, and you want it to be very tight so that you don't have too much variation in the angle of the bar, and reducing vibration and everything. But what you also need is a spot. You need to be able to get the cage in here, and you can't really put it in from the top, because obviously the bar has to go through, and you have a support. You have a support here, so you can't just put it down because the bar is going to hit unless you come up with something clever. So I have a this part's open, and this part's open, so that the saw pushes, the cage pushes in here and then slides down into here. This design is not very good because I only have now, anytime the cage gets significantly, you know, whenever there's more than, let's say, half of the cage above here, I don't have support on the back side of the cage, and didn't get the best performance, stability or anything. So this is how the cage slides in. It's a pretty tight fit, which is what you want. As I said, things have warped a bit, so now it's not only a tight fit, but it's kind of a semi-crooked fit. But once you get it slid all the way in, it should be able to slide up and down. And it barely slides up and down now, because we've got a lot of rain lately, and I think the wood is really swelled up and warped. So this is how you control the height of the bar, and maintaining the height of the bar is actually a joke. The cage has on its highest cross member here a small pulley, and this pulley is I got a piece of twine, and I run the twine through the pulley, and pull it up and down like that, and then when I have the height I want, wrap the twine around these screws, which I thought would be sufficient, but it wasn't, so I ended up having to wrap these around, and then I had a small spring clamp that I clamped on top of here, and that held the twine pretty good, and then that held the chainsaw height relatively well. Not great, but it was okay. One thing that I forgot to bring out here from the garage was kind of a key update that I added, hack I guess you would call it. This side of the mill is much heavier than that side. Obviously there's nothing over there, and as a result the ladder tended to want to tip, or the cage, the whole assembly would start to just, like, you know, the wheels be resting on the bottom over here, but on this side they would actually be pushing against the top because everything would want to tip over. So what I had to do was counterweight this mill. So I probably could have just stuck a 2x4 on here and had a permanent place to hang them, but what I did was I just put some clamps on here, and then the end of the clamps were sticking out, and then I just hung a couple cinder blocks from it, and that that simple, stupid little trick did a great deal to help even out the weight and have it cutting straighter. So it's in here now. I can't do a test cut at the moment, unfortunately. The saw needs to be sharpened, and I don't even know if it has gas in it. And as I said, this whatever this is, ash or whatever, it's not cutting well. The mill is warped a bit. It's not rolling very well. When I initially built it, it was pretty good. It was staying in the rails fairly well, and I could slide it back and forth without too much difficulty. The challenge is to keep it tight in here, and that's like what I said. These help. I cut them fairly precise to get it just pushing against here, but not too much friction, just enough to keep it in place. All right, this other thing I created was to help when I was cutting narrower logs, or when I got close to the bottom of the log, to raise it up a bit off the ladder to get the final closer to the bottom with the cut. So it was just a couple 2x4s. Of course, the ladder wants to tip over because that giant log is off of it now. So initially, I put this together so I could cut a couple of two different things. One was a yard tree, a hardwood yard tree, and the other was a couple of pines that I had to have cut down, and they were huge by the standards of this mill, and they just barely fit on the ladder, and they did not really need this. But then I had another pine that was a lot smaller, that wasn't sitting well, and wasn't sitting high enough, because the head of the mill doesn't come down super low. I think it only comes down to like here or so. So that was like maybe 5 inches or so of the bottom of the board that I couldn't, the bottom of the log that I couldn't cut. So this raised it up a bit, and provided a little bit of stability, since it's a little narrower for narrower logs. It also let me have a place to screw pieces of wood in here to prevent the log from sliding back and forth. I made these slots for kind of like for log dogs. That did not work out super well. I had some cheap square metal tubing, and I don't know where those bits are at the moment, but I notched out this 2x4. The metal tubing slides in there. I drilled some through holes through that tubing, and then an outer hole here, and then I just stick a dowel through it to adjust the height. And I wasn't super impressed with how well that worked. The tubing was very weak. The fit wasn't super snug, so it didn't stabilize things as much as I hoped. Oh, another part of the experience was that keep things somewhat level and stable. I got it on 3 or 4 pieces of pressure treated 4x4 or whatever that is, and I think that's about it. One thing that's critical, you must be able to start the saw while it's in the cage. So I didn't design this great with regards to that, but I can reach the priming bulb, the starting rope, and you also must be able to work the controls. So I can hold these and reach here. I did have it might be in one of the videos about this mill. I had a hand crank thing, so there was a crank here, and then there was a rope that went down through this pulley, and somewhere on the ladder, I might have taken it off already, because I think I kept catching my leg on it. But I had another pulley or something that yeah, I must have taken it off. I had another pulley, and the rope would pull this whole thing down the ladder. It seemed like a good idea, and it still might be a good idea, but I screwed up the way I made this hang crank. I just made it out of wood, and I didn't put the rope in from the middle like you're supposed to, and it got trapped around the handle. It was just kind of a last-minute idea, and it didn't come out well, so I took it off. And now, the way I use the mill is, after it started, hold the throttle with one hand and push with the other hand. And if your saw has the horsepower to cut what you're cutting, it's not terrible, but I've had mixed results with different woods that I've tried to cut because the saw wasn't quite up to it. And see, another critical thing is that the bar really has to be horizontal, or it's really got to be level in all directions. So at some point I remember getting a level out and checking that this was relatively level this way and this way and this way. At this point I'm sure it's not level from all the use and the warping, but that is very important. And I think the key to establishing that it's level is that you'll need you want the saw perpendicular to the cage, and then this outer support has to be pretty vertical. Everything has to be relatively in square so that you end up with a level cut. My stuff certainly wasn't super level, but if it's way out of level, you will have serious problems. So you got to get it as close as you can. And can't think of anything else. So if you try something like this, be careful. I didn't have any problems, and hopefully if you build a secure cage around here, even if your attachment point fails, your saw won't do anything crazy. But you will be breathing in a bunch of fumes as you sit here and push the saw through a cut for a couple of minutes, and it's tedious and unpleasant. So you definitely want to know what you're in for before you start building it, because it did take me a while to get it working at all. But once I did, I got a fair amount of lumber out of it. This is some of the white pine that I cut. I've actually used maybe about a third of it at this point, and I cut thick stuff because the cut is so rough that I knew I was going to have to take a lot off to get it nice and surfaced. And I did that surfacing with my router planing bit, which I think I have a video on, and I took a lot off. I took maybe a 1/4 inch off each side. So I made all my cuts really thick, which you probably should do too, unless you have a lot better luck with this sort of build than I did. And yes, some pieces were smoother than others, depending on how well I filed the chain and how much patience I had to push it through the wood slowly. This is maybe about, like I said, I had about another, pile was about this high. I used some of it already. There's another pile I have somewhere else from another couple of logs that I sawed. So I got a fair amount of use out of that contraption. I hope to not have to use it anymore. If I was going to try to mill some more stuff, I would probably build something new from scratch, and I might try to build it out of metal to avoid these issues with the warping and the, well, I guess the weight would probably be, still be a pain, but all these 2x4s make it so clunky. If it was metal, you know, like there's a Wagasol portable chainsaw mill setup that I really like, and that is metal, and it's much more elegant design. I think it's just something that attaches to the bar, then you know, just one little clamp thing that then attaches to the, you know, to the base. You don't have to build this ridiculous monster wooden thing, but for, you know, whatever it cost me, $10 or $20 total, I guess it's hard to beat. So I think that's about it. Be careful if you try something like this, and be aware that it'll take some patience to get it moving at all. It's a trial and error sort of thing. All right, take care.